Black CEO, humiliated by airline staff one call later, the $1B deal vanished. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to the story. You people always think rules don't apply to you. The words hit the air like a slap, sharp enough to cut through the soft piano music playing in the first-class lounge. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. The woman in the bright blue airline uniform stood rigid, her jaw clenched, voice echoing across the polished glass and chrome. She was furious, angry in the way only authority feels entitled to be. Her name tag read Rebecca, lead customer officer, North Star Airlines. Across from her stood a man in a coral peach blazer and calm eyes hidden behind silver frames. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't flinch. He simply looked at her the way a storm studies the horizon before it moves. "Security!" Rebecca barked, pointing toward the exit. "Get him out!" The nearby passengers froze. A mother clutched her child. A businessman lowered his phone mid-call. One woman in designer silk whispered, "What did he do?" Rebecca continued, voice dripping with disgust. "I don't care who he says he is. If he refuses to move to economy, he's trespassing in premium space." The officer by the door hesitated. Even he looked uncertain. The man, still silent, slowly set his boarding pass on the counter. The gold letters shimmered. Orion Aviation Technologies Executive Access. "Try it," he said softly. The room fell into vacuum. No sound, no breath, just the hum of the air conditioner and the faint buzz of someone's camera starting to record. Rebecca blinked, her face twisting between confusion and defiance. "Are you threatening me?" He didn't answer. He just turned slightly, scanning the room. Every phone lens was pointed at them. Now an uninvited jury, capturing every word, every heartbeat. "Sir," the officer began cautiously, "maybe if you just step aside." "No," the man replied, voice low but unshakable. "You've made your decision. Let's see how it plays out." Rebecca folded her arms, pretending confidence. "I don't need to see anything. Rules are rules." He looked at her, then really looked, and for a moment, her certainty cracked under the weight of calm power. From the corner, an older passenger whispered, "He doesn't look like a man who gets kicked out of places like this." The silence stretched until it snapped with the click of his phone unlocking. His fingers moved deliberately across the screen. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Malik. He lifted the phone to his ear. The room held its breath. "Good afternoon," he said, voice steady as glass. "It's Malik Jordan. Cancel everything with North Star Airlines." A pause. Then a quiet, precise, "Yes, sir," from the voice on the other end. He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. Rebecca frowned, uncertain. "Cancel what?" "The Metterful Temtan Stan and a road mine. It is lasting in a raid tep." Malik adjusted his cufflinks, the faint reflection of the runway lights dancing across his watch. "You'll find out before takeoff. No shouting, no threats. Just a calm man in a coral suit standing in a storm of his own making, while the world, and everyone recording it, waited to learn who he really was." For a full 5 seconds, no one moved. The sound of the lounge, the soft hum of air vents, the faint roll of suitcase wheels all vanished under the weight of silence. It was as if the entire room had been vacuum sealed by tension. Rebecca's posture stiffened, her authority flickering like the airport lights overhead. Malik didn't look angry. He looked certain. The kind of certainty that doesn't shout, it just exists. Rebecca cleared her throat, desperate to reclaim control. "Sir, whatever call you just made, it doesn't change the fact that you're in the wrong section. There are men included." Her voice wavered. "Just a little." Malik's gaze drifted past her, through the panoramic window, to where planes were slicing the afternoon sky in silence. "Funny," he murmured. "I helped design the systems that keep those aircraft in the air. But please, go on." A murmur rippled through the crowd. One man leaned toward another. "Did he just say, design the systems?" The officer, caught between protocol and instinct, looked unsure. He shifted his weight but didn't step forward. Rebecca forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I don't care who you are, sir. You can't speak to staff that way." He turned to her slowly, his tone flat but surgical. "And how exactly did I speak?" Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She knew what she'd said earlier. So did everyone else. The replay was already circulating online, the words you people looped over and over on someone's phone, captions auto-generating in real time. From the back row, a younger man whispered, "It's trending already." Rebecca's face paled. She glanced toward the supervisor desk, hoping for backup, but the manager had vanished. The weight of the room was shifting power, quietly changing seats. Malik picked up his briefcase, brushed invisible dust from his sleeve, and walked a few steps closer. His voice carried the stillness of someone used to boardrooms, not battles. "What you said isn't about policy. It's about perception. And perception is expensive." The officer cleared his throat. "Sir, maybe we can de-escalate." Malik raised a hand gently. "There's no need. This will resolve itself." The ravagey was half-followable. They were half deference assigned. And they generated. Outside the glass wall, a jumbo jet taxied past, its reflection sliding over Malik's face like moving steel. Rebecca finally snapped. "You can't just threaten a company." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't comfort, it warned. "Rebecca, I didn't threaten your company. I was your company." Someone gasped. He adjusted his glasses, calm as ever. "I built the navigation AI your airline licensed 3 years ago, the one you just lost." A woman near the counter whispered, "Oh my God." Rebecca blinked, her breath short. The officer's radio crackled chatter from the control tower. Half-heard phrases, "Contract withdrawal, press inquiry," Orion statement confirmed. The color drained from her face. Malik's phone buzzed once. He checked it briefly. A single text from his legal team, "Contract terminated. Press notified. NDA lifted." There's no how. He locked the screen, looked up, and said quietly, "Looks like you'll have your answers now." Across the lounge, the big television switched from muted news to a live financial ticker. The headline scrolled in bold letters. "Breaking. Orion Aviation withdraws $1 B. Partnership with Northstar Airlines effective immediately." Gasps rippled through the room like turbulence. Phones lit up. A passenger dropped his coffee. Someone whispered, "He wasn't bluffing." Rebecca stood frozen, her authority collapsing faster than the stock price, crawling down the screen behind her. Malik turned away, walking toward the window as the sunlight framed his silhouette. His reflection in the glass looked like two men, the one they saw, and the one they never imagined he could be. Behind him, no one dared speak. The only sound was the faint ding of the next flight announcement. Northstar Flight 212 delayed until further notice. And somewhere deep inside that silence, every witness in that lounge realized they hadn't just seen a man humiliated. They'd watched an empire rearrange itself in real time. The video hit the internet before Malik even boarded his next flight. By the time he reached Gate 7, his name, or rather, his calm silence, was already trending across 3 platforms. Clips replayed in slow motion. The insult, the stare, the single phone call. The comment sections burned with disbelief. "That's Malik Jordan? The guy behind Orion Aviation? Bro just canceled $1 billion deal like it was a coffee order." Power doesn't raise its voice, it just disconnects the mic. Inside the terminal, Malik stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back. From this height, the planes looked like quiet instruments, waiting for command. The chaos online didn't touch him. Not yet. What filled his mind was memory. 20 years earlier, he'd been on the other side of that counter, a young aerospace engineer with too many ideas and not enough patience for gatekeepers. He could still remember the day a recruiter told him, "A black man in flight control? You should consider sales instead." He hadn't answered then either. He just built his own company instead, Orion Aviation Technologies, and turned silence into strategy. Now, that same silence was echoing around the world. His assistant, Rena, appeared beside him, tablet in hand. "It's official," she said. "Northstar's board just went into emergency session. Their stock dropped 12% in the last 20 minutes. Malik didn't react. And the press? In the better was the ration that was a cumbery. CNN, Bloomberg, Business Wire all confirmed. They're calling it the cost of arrogance. He nodded once. Good. Rena hesitated. Do you want me to issue a formal statement? Malik turned slightly, eyes calm but sharp. No. Let the footage speak. People believe what they see, not what they read. She smiled faintly. That line's going to end up on a quote card. He exhaled slowly, watching a plane lift into the sky, steel wings catching the same sunlight that had once burned his dreams. They'll forget the numbers, he murmured, but they'll remember the silence. Meanwhile, across the city, chaos unfolded inside Northstar's headquarters. The CEO, Richard Keaton, paced behind tinted glass, his voice a mix of rage and disbelief. He what? Canceled the entire deal over some staff dispute? His legal officer shook her head. It's not just a dispute. There's video. Millions of views already. Then delete it, he snapped. She swallowed hard. It's everywhere, sir. We can't delete the internet. Malik's phone vibrated again, a message from his communications director. He opened it briefly. Public sentiment, 94% positive. Hashtag number fly with dignity, gaining traction. He smiled. Not a triumphant smile, a knowing one. The past 24 hours would erase years of polite dismissals, of invisible barriers disguised as procedures. He'd built his empire on engineering precision, but this moment, this accidental uprising of conscience had become his loudest invention. Rena glanced at him. You know they'll call you ruthless. They called me unrealistic when I built Orion, he said. They'll call me ruthless when I defend it. Either way, they're talking. He adjusted his jacket, voice returning to its usual measured tone. Have the legal team proceed with asset reallocation. The canceled budget goes to the Global Pilot Scholarship Fund. Rena blinked. All of it? Every dollar. Her expression softened. Your grandmother would be proud. Malik's eyes shifted, distant for a heartbeat. He could almost see her, the woman who used to sit by a cracked window, folding airline napkins from cleaning shifts into paper planes for him. She taught me how to dream, he said quietly. Now I teach the world what respect looks like. Outside, a Northstar jet rolled past its logo, catching the sunset like fading gold. Passengers inside had no idea that the man watching from Gate 7 had just rewritten their company's future with one call. For Malik, this wasn't revenge. It was correction, a quiet recalibration of dignity in a world that had forgotten its altitude. And somewhere between the ground and the clouds, justice began to take flight. At sunrise the next morning, the footage from the lounge was everywhere on news tickers, talk shows, and morning podcasts. They slowed the clip frame by frame. The insult, the pause, the call, the silence after. The world was no longer watching a minor airport argument, it was watching a cultural mirror crack in public. At O'Hare International, passengers whispered about it at boarding gates. You see that guy, the CEO? Man didn't even raise his voice. Someone else chimed in. Power doesn't need volume, bro. Just consequence. Meanwhile, Northstar Airlines tried to contain the fallout. Their PR team flooded the press with a polished statement. We value diversity and inclusion. The incident does not reflect our company values. But the internet had already made its verdict. Screens everywhere played the same haunting sound. Rebecca's words, "You people always think rules don't apply to you." Each replay deepened the silence in boardrooms. Sponsors pulled funding. Investors went quiet. And behind the closed doors of corporate offices, careers trembled. At that same hour, Malik was at a coffee shop near the runway, the kind of small, local cafe where no one asked for selfies. He wore plain gray, a face half hidden behind glasses, and thought. Rena joined him with 2 cups. You're trending higher than any airline, she said, sliding a tablet across the table. Every headline calls it the $1B silence. He glanced at the screen, unreadable. Interesting. Rebecca's been suspended, Rena continued. Northstar's CEO just issued an apology video. Comments are brutal. Everyone can tell it's scripted. Malik stirred his coffee slowly, eyes distant. They always apologize to protect money, not people. Still, she said, leaning forward, the public wants your side. Shouldn't we? He cut her off gently. No. The moment you explain, you start negotiating your worth. She studied him, half admiring, half afraid. You think this will stick? It always sticks when the world sees its reflection. He looked out the window. On the tarmac, a Northstar jet waited in standby, the morning light making its fuselage shimmer like denial disguised as pride. Inside, passengers scrolled through their phones, watching him the man they'd seen humiliated just 24 hours earlier. Some whispered his name like rumor, others like prayer. A middle-aged woman turned to her husband. He could have yelled, sued, called the media. Her husband shook his head. Didn't need to. That silence hit harder than any statement. This said was long second the wang is of good analysis piece. In May Eddie Weldem. Back at the airline's HQ, chaos turned desperate. Executives argued across a sleek glass table. This isn't just PR, one said. It's systemic. Richard Keaton slammed his fist down. It's viral nonsense. We'll survive this. Another executive replied quietly, we survive mistakes. We don't survive symbols. And right now, he's the symbol of what we ignored. Silence fell. Even Pride knew when it had no landing strip left. By noon, a journalist cornered Malik as he exited the cafe. Mr. Jordan, do you consider what happened yesterday an act of revenge? He paused, eyes glinting behind his frames. No. Revenge wants applause. I prefer accountability. New. The clip went viral within the hour. Number Fly with Dignity trended in 50 cities. Stock analysts used words like moral correction and corporate humility index. Memes appeared overnight. His calm face next to captions like, this is what quiet power looks like. Rena watched it all unfold. You realize you've started a movement? She said. Malik shook his head lightly. I didn't start anything. I just stopped pretending. He rose from the table, adjusting his jacket, eyes fixed on the horizon, where another plane ascended into pale gold sky. You know what's funny? He said softly. They thought they were grounding me. Turns out I was the runway. And as the engines roared above, the crowd, digital and real, divided cleanly between those who feared his silence and those who finally understood it. The boardroom of North Star Airlines looked nothing like the polished image it once projected. The panoramic skyline behind the CEO's desk no longer felt powerful, it looked like judgment. 12 executives sat in tense silence, their reflections fractured across the glass table. Every phone vibrated with the same notification. Orion Aviation withdraws $1B contract. Richard Keaton's voice finally broke the stillness. How bad is it? His CFO's answer came out thin. By the hour? About 90 million. He gripped the table's edge. I want a call with Orion. Now, the legal officer swallowed. Sir, Malik Jordan's team isn't taking our calls. Their office said, quote, the decision is final. Silence again. Heavy. Suffocating. One junior executive tried to speak. We could offer a public correction. Invite him to meet. Richard cut him off. Meet? With the man who humiliated us? The words hung in the air, the irony so thick it almost hummed. Across the city, Malik sat in his downtown office, a minimalist fortress of glass and calm. The skyline glowed behind him like a quiet witness. Rena entered without knocking, holding a sleek phone. North Star's PR team just called again. Malik didn't look up from his laptop. Did you record it? She nodded. They're begging for a retraction. They want to rebuild the partnership under mutual understanding. He closed the laptop softly. They had their understanding when they called security. Rena hesitated, then asked what everyone else had been thinking. Sir, do you ever regret doing it so fast? He leaned back, eyes distant. Do you regret locking a door that's already burning? Her silence was answer enough. Somewhere between New York and Atlanta, the world was still adjusting. Airline stock tickers flashed red. Late-night hosts replayed his quote, revenge wants applause. I prefer accountability. It is that I will be, say, in the company. The public didn't see corporate warfare, they saw morality with a boardroom accent. Malik's phone buzzed again. Not from his staff, from his mentor, Thomas, a retired pilot who'd once given him his first job. Malik, the voice rasped over speaker. You made a statement, but what's next? The same thing I've always done, Malik said. Build systems that don't fail people. You think that's possible? Not yet. But they'll start by asking why $1 billion vanished in silence. Thomas chuckled softly. You always had a poetic streak. Your grandmother would have liked this ending. Malik smiled faintly. It's not an ending. He glanced at the world map displayed across the office wall, glowing pins, marking every Orion partnership. One blinked off. North Star headquarters. Then another pin lit up in its place. Global Aviation Scholarship Program active. Meanwhile, Rebecca sat alone in her apartment, the TV light flickering against her face. She'd turned off every phone notification, but the story followed her like static. Her face, frozen mid-insult, had become the thumbnail of an era she never meant to represent. She pressed her palms to her temples. The words replayed in her head. You people always think rules don't apply to you. Now, the rules applied to her. Suspension, investigation, public outrage. She thought of Malik's silence. How it wasn't anger, it was something colder, cleaner. And for the first time, she understood the look he gave her before he spoke. Not fury, but pity. Back at Orion, Rena received a new message. She walked it to Malik's desk. Press wants a quote, she said quietly. He shook his head. They'll get a principal. In for Allah wrote Dodd. He typed a single sentence, sent it to every major outlet. Dignity doesn't negotiate, it decides. Malik Jordan, CEO, Orion Aviation Technologies. Within minutes, the statement was everywhere, reposted, highlighted, framed. The world recognized a new kind of leadership, one that didn't need noise to be heard. Rena looked up from her screen. Sir, do you ever wonder if they'll learn from this? Malik's gaze drifted to the horizon outside his window. No, he said softly, but the next generation will. He turned away as the city lights reflected against the glass, a quiet empire born from silence, powered by justice, moving higher than turbulence could ever reach. By Monday morning, North Star Airlines had entered freefall. The opening bell on Wall Street hadn't even rung when financial networks splashed their headline in red. North Star stock plunges 37% after Orion withdrawal, and his cider ward. It wasn't just a bad day, it was an extinction event. Emails flooded the boardroom. Canceled credit lines, suspended partnerships, suppliers demanding renegotiations. The billion-dollar contract with Orion hadn't just vanished, it had unraveled everything tied to it. The company's AI navigation systems, built entirely on Orion software, were suddenly locked out by security protocols. Dozens of flights were grounded. The same technology that had made them efficient was now reminding them who had authored their success. Richard Keaton, once hailed as the architect of modern flight infrastructure, was now trapped in a conference call where no one could fix what had already broken. Can we get a temporary license extension? He barked. The legal counsel's voice came back brittle. They revoked all API access, sir. It's like they pulled the plug from the sky. In a pot of the climb to solve any problems, the every times of the great men are way. Then pay them. They're not taking money. They're taking principle. He slammed his hand against the desk, the sound echoing through the hollow pride of a man who just met consequence for the first time. Across town, Malik sat in his private office, calm as ever. The city below was buzzing with the sound of reporters, stock alerts, and disbelief. Rena entered, tablet in hand. North Star's operations are down. They're calling it the biggest corporate implosion since Enron. Malik didn't look up. That's an exaggeration. She hesitated. Actually, sir, it's not. He glanced out the window, the skyline mirrored in his glasses. Then maybe it's evolution. Rena watched him quietly. There was no joy in his voice, only inevitability. People think you planned all this, she said. Malik gave a small shake of his head. No one plans disrespect. It just introduces itself, and you decide how to respond. Her tone softened. So, what happens now? He turned toward her, eyes steady. Now? Justice finishes its paperwork. At North Star headquarters, the chain reaction was merciless. Investors demanded leadership resignations. Employees whispered about layoffs. Even the airline's social media accounts were flooded with passengers canceling bookings, posting screenshots of Malik's quote, "Dignity doesn't negotiate, it decides." Rebecca's photo had been replaced by an apology graphic. It didn't help. The comments burned through every excuse. "You didn't lose a contract," one user wrote. "You lost the room." Another added, "He built your wings. You clipped your own." By noon, the company's official Twitter account was locked. PR couldn't contain what morality had already broadcast. Meanwhile, at Orion's HQ, Malik met with his legal and ethics teams. The room was minimalist, no trophies, no plaques, just clarity. North Star's bankruptcy will affect thousands of jobs, one advisor warned. Should we reconsider the withdrawal? Malik's expression didn't change. We didn't destroy them. We revealed them. He tapped a file on the table, the same partnership reports North Star had ignored when they underpaid regional contractors, cut maintenance budgets, and blamed pilots for delays. They built an empire on exploitation, he continued quietly. I just turned on the lights. The room fell silent. Even his lawyers understood the poetry in that sentence. That afternoon, the financial networks aired a live segment from outside Orion's building. Reporters swarmed, their words tumbling over one another. Industry analysts calling it a new precedent for ethical retaliation. Investors praising Jordan's leadership as a masterclass in silent authority. Inside, Malik watched the broadcast for a brief moment, then switched it off. The louder they talk, he said, the more I prefer quiet. He walked toward the window, where planes shimmered in the sun, tracing silver arcs across the blue. For a man accused of grounding an empire, he looked like someone who'd simply given the sky back its balance. Rena joined him at the glass. It's strange, she said. They mocked you for standing too tall, and now they can't stop looking up. Malik smiled faintly. That's gravity, he replied. It always reminds arrogance where home is. In Ride have a broad formated, is in lading on a well. In my outside, a North Star aircraft stood motionless on the tarmac, engines off, logo fading beneath the sunlight, a monument to every empire that mistook privilege for permanence. And in the silence that followed, one truth settled like ash after a storm. When dignity moves, the world makes way. By midweek, the story had grown bigger than aviation. What began as a 30-second lounge video had turned into a global conversation, a morality test disguised as breaking news. Talk show hosts dissected it like scripture. College professors used it in lectures about systemic bias. Even comedians found ways to spin it until the punchlines felt too close to truth. The hashtag number #FlyWithDignity was no longer about Malik Jordan. It had become a movement, a collective demand for respect in uniforms, in boardrooms, in every place where silence used to mean survival. Across the internet, reaction videos flooded timelines. Some were angry, some inspired. Most ended the same way with quiet awe. He didn't shout. He didn't curse. He just ended them. In Chicago, outside North Star's shuttered headquarters, protesters gathered with signs that read, "Dignity has no class section," and "Justice at 30,000 feet." The same lounge where Rebecca once barked orders now stood empty, a sterile symbol of consequence. Inside, cameras caught her leaving the building, head down, escorted by HR. No guards, no media statement, just the soft click of the door closing behind her. She wasn't fired for what she said officially. She was released during corporate restructuring. But everyone knew the truth. On her phone, one clip still looped. Malik's face, calm and measured, before he made the call that rewrote her life. She replayed it over and over, the words echoing inside her like a sentence without an end. Try it. For the first time, she understood what that tone meant. Not arrogance, not threat, but finality. Meanwhile, at Orion's HQ, Malik sat in a private conference with global press networks. Cameras flashed. Journalists leaned forward ready for a headline. One reporter asked the question everyone wanted answered. Mr. Jordan, do you think your decision has gone too far? Thousands could lose their jobs because of one person's mistake. Malik paused before replying. No one loses a job because of my silence. They lose it because their leadership tolerated disrespect. The room went still, he continued, voice even but razor sharp. If one incident can bring down $1 billion corporation, then the foundation was already cracked. I just refuse to stand on it. The seat is not healthy, Dak. The statement hit the news within minutes. Clips of his words flooded every major outlet, translated into dozens of languages. If one incident can bring down $1 billion corporation, then the foundation was already cracked. It became the quote of the year printed on posters, turned into lecture slides, recited in business schools as modern gospel. Across the city, small acts of change began to ripple. Flight attendants started filming their own apology videos, not for Malik, but for passengers they'd once dismissed. A pilot used his morning announcement to remind his crew, respect isn't part of the uniform, it's the reason we wear it. The cabin erupted in applause. Social media had its villains, of course. Some accused Malik of overreacting, others called him too powerful. It is a world. But the louder they debated, the clearer his silence became a mirror none of them could look away from. Rena scrolled through her feed that night, watching the digital storm unfold. They're calling you the quiet architect, she said, half amused, half proud. Malik looked up from his notes, unfazed. Architects don't crave credit. They build what lasts. You realize you've changed the culture, right? He gave a small smile. Culture doesn't change with speeches. It changes with standards. Rena leaned against the glass wall, gazing at the city lights below. And what's the new standard, sir? He looked out at the skyline, the same towers that once refused to let him in, now lit up with his company's logo. The same one my grandmother taught me, he said softly. When they lower your seat, rise in your silence. This has the ad of the arum. There's Rhine long cadell of the ass. Outside, a plane climbed into the night, engines glowing like justice finding its altitude. And for the first time in decades, the world didn't just watch a man defend his dignity, it learned how. 3 weeks later, the storm had quieted, at least on the surface. North Star Airlines was in court, facing class action lawsuits, investor withdrawals, and a federal ethics probe. The company's logo, once embossed in gold across terminals, was now half peeled from the glass walls of its corporate tower, a monument to arrogance decaying in daylight. Malik Jordan hadn't spoken publicly since his last press conference. He didn't need to. His silence had already turned into an ecosystem. Investors, scholars, activists, all orbiting around the gravity of one principle. Dignity is policy. At Orion's headquarters, the mood was calm, productive, electric. The walls buzzed with New Life engineers refining AI prototypes, interns drafting scholarship proposals, and analysts fielding calls from airlines that had once ignored him, now begging for partnership. Rena entered his office, tablet in hand. "Sir, the board approved the redirection," she said. Malik looked up. "All of it? Every cent from the North Star deal. $283 million transferred to the Global Pilot Scholarship Fund." He nodded slowly, eyes softening. "Good. Make sure it carries her name." Rena tilted her head. "Her? Evelyn Jordan, my grandmother." For a moment, the air between them stilled, reverent, almost sacred. He continued, his voice lower. "She used to clean airplanes she couldn't afford to ride. Now her name will lift 1,000 pilots who never thought they belonged in the cockpit." Rena smiled. "You just turned revenge into infrastructure." Malik shook his head gently. "No. Revenge burns. Infrastructure builds." The scholarship launch made headlines again, but this time, the tone had changed. Newspapers called it a billion-dollar recalibration. A major aviation journal titled its feature, "From Outrage to Opportunity, How One Decision Rewired an Industry." Cameras captured the first press event, Malik standing on a small stage beside a row of young cadets in crisp Navy uniforms. They represented the first class of the Evelyn Jordan Global Aviation Initiative, 50 students from underrepresented backgrounds, each receiving full tuition, flight hours, and guaranteed placements in international airlines. The crowd applauded. Reporters fired questions. Malik answered few. One journalist asked, "Mr. Jordan, do you see this as part of your legacy?" He smiled faintly. "Legacy is what others decide. This is repair." The camera shutters clicked like rain. That same evening, Malik visited the small neighborhood in South Chicago, where he'd grown up. The houses were older now, the streets quieter, but the air still carried the scent of engine oil and ambition. He stopped outside a worn brick building that used to be his grandmother's apartment. The window where she once sat folding airline napkins was still there, cracked, but standing. He set down a small plaque beneath it, "For Evelyn Jordan, who believed flight was never about altitude, but attitude." The neighborhood children gathered, curious. One of them, a little girl with bright braids, pointed at the plaque. "Was she a pilot?" Malik smiled. "No, but she gave wings to one." Across the world, others began to follow. A London-based carrier announced a diversity investment fund, citing Malik's initiative. A Tokyo aviation firm adopted Orion's ethics protocol as part of its operational standard. And in Johannesburg, a group of engineers launched the Silent Seat Project, a mentorship program for young professionals of color entering corporate spaces where their worth was often questioned before their work began. Every headline echoed the same lesson. Power, once centered, could be redistributed without a single shout. Meanwhile, Rebecca, the former airline employee, whose words started it all, watched the launch from her small apartment. She hadn't worked since her dismissal. The light from the TV flickered across her face as Malik's speech played. "We can't control how others see us," he was saying, "but we can control how we rebuild what they tried to break." The Yada Gather stage chief Frive is having a rassence and the right offer, miss. Rebecca's eyes filled, not with anger but with something closer to awakening. She whispered to herself, he built something. Out of me. She turned off the TV and sat in the quiet, thinking of the passengers she'd once ordered around, of the small cruelties that had passed as professionalism. For the first time in her adult life, she questioned what service really meant. That night, Malik sat alone on his terrace, city lights glittering below like constellations. Rena joined him, 2 cups of tea in hand. They're calling you a reformer now, she said softly. He gave a quiet chuckle. They called me dangerous last month. The world changes vocabulary faster than values. She leaned against the railing. Still, you did something historic. He looked out toward the horizon, a plane passing overhead, its blinking lights cutting through the dark like purpose itself. I didn't end an airline, he said finally. I started a conversation. The world will decide how long it wants to keep listening. Rena smiled. And if they stop? He turned to her, eyes steady. Then we remind them. Quietly. The wind carried his words into the night, blending with the distant hum of engines, not the roar of conquest, but the rhythm of restoration. Below, the city pulsed with light, some of it old, much of it new, each one a reminder that power, when wielded with grace, doesn't just punish. It rebuilds. And above it all, the planes kept climbing steady, silent, unshaken. Because dignity, once airborne, never lands the same way again. A month later, Malik boarded a flight, not Orion's, not North Star's, just an ordinary commercial route. No cameras, no headlines, just peace. As he fastened his seatbelt, the flight attendant smiled warmly. Welcome aboard, Mr. Jordan. He returned the smile, genuine and calm. Thank you. Through the window, clouds drifted like memory, weightless, unbothered. Rena's words echoed in his mind. You didn't end them. You elevated everyone else. He closed his eyes, the engines humming beneath him. Justice didn't roar. It ascended.